It's my pleasure and Kieran's pleasure. As I said, Kieran and I are the co-founders of the AgilePA event. We've been running these quarterly meetings for the last couple of years. He and I work. How many people here have ever volunteered to work on some kind of a project? Anybody? So let me guess. When somebody said to you, "Hey, if you're not doing anything, can you just help out?" It's only going to take a little time, a couple of minutes of your time. And how much did that actually become?
Well, it's the same category as the Got a Minute meeting.
Exactly. Got a Minute meeting, the same thing. So it wound up becoming all obsessive, and you were all in, and you spent more time than you ever thought you wanted to. That's what Kieran and I did when we started this 4 years ago. We said, we'll just put one little meeting out there, and somehow we just keep doing it. I don't know how or why, but in any event, both of us have known Beth, your speaker for tonight, for more years. We knew her for when she was 6 years old, so that's only 10 years ago. That's right, exactly. 10 years. We've learned her when she was 6 years old. And Beth has been a really great supporter, and we are here to help her. So there is absolutely, yes, you need to ask a bunch of questions and keep her engaged, because that likes to talk almost as much as me. Almost. It's hard to compare.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Good. I do that. Here. Thank you. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited that you're here to hear me talk. And I want to thank Kieran and Jay for inviting me this evening. And I'm really excited to share Sungard Availability Services Agile journey with all of you guys. Obviously, our journey is not done yet, but we're making pretty good progress, and I'm going to tell you about it. So, a little bit about me. This is me when I was 5 years old. That's when I started at Sungard AX. But what I thought was really funny about this picture is that I look exactly the same. I smile anyway. And I smile all the time. I started in IT as a developer, writing code, Java, web applications, that kind of thing. And as time went by, I moved into managing people, managing projects. I got my PMP in 2007. In 2011, we decided to try this thing called Agile. And it's grown. And I said, that sounds kind of cool. I'll learn about that too. And that's where my journey with Agile started, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Now I'm in our PMO. I'm an IT program manager. And even though I know a lot of times they say don't have the project managers be your scrum masters, we did that. And it hasn't turned out so bad. Some other things about me, right here. Some other things about me, I am an eternal optimist. So, and I think that is actually important when you're trying to drive change that is big as becoming Agile at a company, because there are a lot of roadblocks that get put in your path. Change is really hard for people, and you have to stay positive about it and keep being a champion and being a cheerleader. Sometimes I feel like my title should be cheerleader instead of IT program manager. But that's okay, because I don't mind. So let's see, I want to tell you a little bit about Sungard Availability Services, my company. We are a specialized company that provides IT services for other companies. We started in 1982. We actually were founded in 1978, but in 1982, we spun off from Sun Oil, which is where we started. Sun Oil actually said to a bunch of other companies in the Philadelphia area, you know, we have these big mainframe servers, and what happens if one of them goes down and we can't run our business? We need a backup one. But it's really expensive to have them sitting around doing nothing most of the time. So let's get together with a bunch of other companies in the area and share this server, right? This big mainframe. And so that's what they did, and that is how Sungard Availability Services was founded. So the sun in our name comes from Sun Oil. And GUARD is actually an acronym that stands for Guaranteed Access to Recovery Data. And so that's where we came from. We were eventually bought up by Sungard Data Systems, which is a big financial services company, which is no longer Sungard Data Systems. Now they're owned by SIS. In 2005, though, Sungard Data Systems and us, we were bought by a group of equity partners called Silver Lake Partners. And then in 2014, Sungard Availability Services was spun off into an independent entity. So now, that's where we are. And 2014 was a real turning point for us, even in our Agile journey. We were finally independent, so we could make some decisions that we couldn't before, being owned by a financial services company. And we also made decisions at that time to really change the strategic direction of the company. So that was an important factor as well. I'm getting ahead of myself. Some other things, so now we not only do disaster recovery, but we also do managed services, information availability, cloud services. Basically, if it's a new technology out there that our customers want to use, we're going to learn and know how to do it, and we're going to sell it. We need to be ahead of our customers in the technology world because we need to know what they're going to want before they even know they want it. Which makes it a really exciting industry to be in, and also means we have to change and adapt really quickly. It sets us up really well to be agile. So let me give you a little more history about Agile at Sungard AS and the situation that we were in our IT department. I just need this water. So I mentioned that we started in 2011. And we had the idea that we wanted to try and become agile. And I don't know if we really thought it through at the time, or I'm not sure we had a fully baked plan at that time, which is okay. But we sent some people to training, really only a handful of people here at Penn State Great Valley. And so we had this handful of certified Scrum Masters, and we changed all of the names of our processes to be Scrum names. We were doing a monthly sprint, and we were having daily stand-up, and we were doing all those things. But none of the mindset really shifted at all. We were really doing mini waterfalls. And I think that's a common problem that happens when companies first try and go agile. They rename everything, make it a little shorter, and say, hey, we're agile, when they're still really doing mini waterfalls. So we definitely suffered from that. And so when we had been doing that till 2014, so for 3 years. And when we became independent, the company also decided, I mentioned this, that it was really time, when I talk about our current kind of landscape, or our landscape at the time, it was really time to change the company and change the way that we do business, change how responsive we could be to our customers, and all of those kinds of things. So I mentioned this, I'm from our internal IT department. So that's a little bit of a different scenario than, say, an independent software developer or something like that. We are supporting the software that runs our business. So a lot of times it's a prepackaged tool that comes off the shelf, or we're customizing it, but we're not really building very much from scratch. So that's an interesting and different challenge when it comes to Agile. Agile is definitely easier if you control the whole package. But still worked out for us. The systems and tools that we had in place had become very cumbersome. We had customized them a great deal. They'd been in place for 10 years. We'd applied a lot of Band-Aids. We had built a lot of customizations. Our users had come up with all of these manual workarounds and things that would help them get around the issues that they saw with the system, and they thought that was easier than reporting them to us to say, hey, fix this for me, it's not working. So we had a lot of really spaghetti, loosey-goosey process and systems and things like that. Not only that, but every country was doing things in a different way. And we had been given the directive to become a global organization with global processes that were consistent, so that our customers could be anywhere in the world and we would treat them the same. So we had this directive to really reinvent ourselves. And we knew that that couldn't just be done with changing our tool set. I think everybody in this room probably understands that throwing a new tool at a problem is not going to solve it. The problem is usually something else. And so we We had a big process initiative. We had a big tool change initiative because nobody wanted the old tools even if we could fix them. And a lot of change. The story is largely about change. And change is really hard for people. They don't want to do it. So change management became kind of a PMO's middle name, I think. So we knew it was time to change. We knew we were changing everything. We knew that probably every department in the company was going to be impacted. And we also knew that every single person in the company had an opinion about how it should be done. And we've been down the road before, right? When we put in the old system, it was the same thing. Well, we have to align this. We have to get our processes in order. So we wanted to make sure that when we did it, it would be different this time, or it would be better this time. Enter Agile. So we did some planning up front, although I have to admit, probably not as much planning as we should have. And I should say, I'm talking about this in the past tense. We are still in the midst of all of this transformation. We're about a year into it, so it's still ongoing. I'm not sure we'll ever be done. But so when we started, I had kind of been obsessed might be a strong word, but pushing the idea of Agile and Scrum since 2011 when we first started talking about it. To me, that concept, the idea of being Agile, of prioritizing the things that are the most important and have the most business value, that way of operating for an IT department makes perfect sense, especially when your stakeholders, who are your internal business users, don't really know what they want. And when they see it, they realize that's not what they wanted. So to me, that methodology made really great sense for Sungard for our IT department. So I've been sort of pushing it when we started talking about these big changes. And somehow, nobody really said, yeah, go ahead. I just sort of did it. And it happened to be that I was assigned as the program manager for the first piece of our strategic initiative, changing our tool set. And it happened to be our billing engine. Now, I got to tell you guys, if you don't have to replace the billing engine, you should. but that is what we decided to start with, and so that's where we started. And so I said I would like to do this in an Agile fashion, and nobody said no. So we did. And I kind of used that team, and I still use that team as my guinea pigs, and I try out all my new ideas and techniques on them. And that's a really great luxury for you to have, by the way, if you're trying to drive this kind of change in an organization. It's nice to have a team that you can experiment with. So we did a little bit of experimenting, and it seemed to kind of be working. And so then I decided it was probably time to formalize this and get actual buy-in and maybe some funding for training and things like that from our leadership. So I wrote this vision, and I wrote the benefits that I thought we would achieve. And I got to tell you guys, these are pretty generic benefits, right? These are the things that you always hear about when you talk about Agile. Ability to respond more quickly, faster, more business value, focus on what's right, better quality, that kind of thing. But I presented it, and I wrote this little vision statement, and they loved it. And they said, that's what we want to do. And I said, well, good, then let's do it. So I was formally then in charge of our Agile transformation. We were starting from a really imperfect place. So our teams are not, even to this day, all co-located. They're not co-located. Not all of our team members are dedicated, which I know is sometimes a big problem. Our employees are not used to failure. We're very fortunate that we have a lot of employees who've been there a long time, but that also means that they are a little bit set in their ways, and they're used to how things work, and they're used to kind of the status quo. So changing things and trying something new where there's a risk of failure is really, really scary for them. We also weren't really sure how to define what our product was. One of the things in Scrum is that you need to know what your product is and what you're building. We didn't really know if our product was our IT systems, or maybe it's the products that we're selling to our customers, our public cloud offering, or our managed services offering, or is it the individual pieces of the tools that we're delivering. We weren't really sure how to define our product, and that has changed and evolved over time too, which is interesting. But we started pretty small with our billing engine with our product, our quoting tool with the product, our general application maintenance we call it a product. Maybe not so traditional. We have a strong command and control culture. Our management was very strong. There was a lot of directives. You do this, now you do that, now you do the other thing. People were not being given the option to make decisions independently. Even though we had lots of smart people working for us, they were basically going through the motions of doing their job and not making decisions about the best way to do their job, or or to push back when somebody said, well, I want to do it this way, even though they knew that that might not be the best way. So that was something we had to overcome. And then we weren't good at change. We weren't good at self-organizing. We were not good at letting go. In fact, we're still not good at all of those things. So one of the things on the slide that we decided to do right up front, because change is a big mountain to overcome, or fear of change is. We found all of these quotes, and one of our PMO team meetings, the whole team, was Arts and Crafts Day, and I brought in this colored paper and fancy scissors and all that, and we made these signs. We printed out quotes that were about change, and we made these signs that were colorful, and we wrote Agile is coming on the bottom. And we put them up all over the office space. You know, the office is generally pretty drab. It's these gray cubicles, and they're not that exciting. So we decorated them with these signs, and they were something different to look at. And people kind of went, wait, Agile is coming? That's good. Okay, interesting. That's interesting. We'll check that out. And the quotes were about change and making you really think about your perception of what change means. And so I've kind of scattered them throughout the presentation here because they inspired me to keep going in our journey, and I hope that they inspired the people in the department to think about how their job works as well. Okay, so we were kind of ready to get going there. And actually, I want to talk about this quote for a minute, because this is actually, I think, this quote that spurred me to want to make this change, or to want to start that change now, at that time at Sungard AI. And so the quote is actually from Lemony Snicket, which is a children's book. But it says, "Are you ready?" Are you ready? Finally. No, said the answer. We need a ride, it said. But if we wait until we're ready to go, we'll be waiting for the rest of our lives. Let's go. And to me, that kind of encapsulates the whole idea of start where you stand. It's never going to be perfect timing. There's always going to be something that comes up to say why you shouldn't do it. But you know what? Start where you are. You will get better over time. And that's kind of been my theme, and I say that a lot to the people on my team, the people in my department, because I want them to remember that it's okay that we're not perfect. We'll get there one day. So we started, I thought it was important that we start with training. When we tried to become Agile the first time, we didn't train everybody. We only trained a few people. And even though those people were really good at explaining what Agile was and what Scrum was to people, I thought it was really important to help people take ownership of their own destiny, kind of, and give them the opportunity to attend the training themselves. So we worked with Jay here at Penn State Great Valley, and we were able to train all of our employees here and in India, and we're working on the UK, we'll get there. But we were able to have them all attend one of 4 different classes, and we were given a choice about which class to attend, which was kind of a little subtle way to have them start making decisions about their destiny. So the 4 options they had were a 1-day Agile overview, a certified Scrum Master class, a certified Scrum Product Owner, or a certified Scrum Developer. And every single person went, and to me, it was more important that our management went than even our workers went. So everybody had to attend, including our vice president, who kind of authorized this. And And to me, that was really important because I needed everybody to understand the change that we were trying to make. And I needed them all to be on the same page. So we're very fortunate to have Karen teach all the classes, and Raj, I think, taught some of our Scrum developers. So we were very fortunate to have consistent teaching across all of that. All throughout, I am cognizant of the cultural change that this has been for us. I talked a lot about this already, but our people were not, it's really hard for people, unless they are already go-getters, to take the initiative, to self-organize, and to even know how to do that. It's not that they don't want to or can't, it's that they don't know how. So I had to continually find creative ways to encourage that kind of new behavior. And then the little Agile is coming tagline, I think, just helped build excitement. Also, I think Game of Thrones is playing about that time, so it's like winter is coming. Some other things that we went through, we did start with one strategic project, as I mentioned, our billing engine. And we did stand up a transformation team, and they named themselves Agile Express, like a train. That seems to be a theme around here with my talk. And that team, we took members from each of the different areas. We had someone from QA, someone from our help desk, someone from our PMO, someone from our development team. And so everybody was equally represented. Everybody had an equal voice. And they were told and they were empowered that they were the representatives for their whole group, and that their decisions and the things that we decided together and came up with together would stick. It wasn't that somebody was going to come in and overrule us. And giving them that power, I think, was really important. I think a lot of times people had been used to being told something or coming up with something and then being told, oh, well, that won't work because of whatever reason. So being told that they were empowered, I'm not sure they believed me at first, but they started to see their decisions coming into practice, and that helped. We also set quarterly targets for ourselves. Sometimes when you have this huge list of things that you want to do, it's really hard to figure out what to do first. And I served as the product owner for our Agile transformation team. That was a pretty interesting experience for me. It still is. Being a product owner is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. You have to be really clear in what you want. And I'd write what I thought was a pretty clear story, and then they'd ask me 50 questions, and I'd go, well, I didn't think of that, I didn't think of that, I didn't think of that. So even that, not only was it a journey for our department, but I think I've had quite a transformation myself. I've learned a lot about myself and how to be a better human, really, and communicate better and that kind of thing. So setting those quarterly targets helped us to stay a little more focused, and we kind of considered those our releases. Even though we weren't building software, we were building a transformation. We had to do a lot of thinking about how to fit in with our existing metrics and reporting. Now, eventually, and I think we're getting closer to this, our old metrics will go away entirely, and our management will be used to seeing new Agile metrics. And we do report burn downs, we do report, percentage complete based on ethics and things like that now. So we're making great progress in that area. But at first, they were not ready to let go of their old metrics. So we had to do some balancing there and kind of say, look, if the burn down shows this is what it means in your old language. We got through all of it. We did all of those things. And at the end of last year, we kind of said, all right, we're ready to stand up some more of these strategic programs. How are we going to do that? And we looked into, there's a lot of larger Agile frameworks that you guys might know of. And I think they all have pros and cons, but it happened to be that I had read about less, and it happened to be that it was going to be taught here at Penn State Great Valley, so that was pretty convenient for me. And it seemed like the least cumbersome of all of those larger frameworks. And so I said, hey, I would like to go to this less class. And they said, yeah, all right, you didn't get to go to any of the other Scrum trainings because I had already been. So, okay, that's fine. And I came, and it kind of opened my eyes to the possibilities of what could be next. And I'm actually now a huge fan of Beth. And my favorite thing I think I learned in that class is that large-scale Scrum is still Scrum. And I think that what that class did for me was solidify even more the right way to do Scrum. And then you kind of put the less framework on top of it. I don't want to get into all of the details of what is less and all of that. There are plenty of other ways to learn that. But it was really eye-opening for me. And I think even when you're the expert at your company, there's still lots of room to learn more things. Okay, so the review part of our session here. So where are we? Ooh, sorry about that. Press the wrong button. Okay, so where are we now? We have trained 87% of our employees formally. All of them have been trained informally. I've gotten pretty good at giving this like 2-hour Scrum 101 overview to people who either are new or haven't had a chance to go yet to the training. And sometimes I can do it in about 30 minutes, depending. But yeah, I like to spend about 2 hours with it. So 87% of our IT staff has been trained formally, and we're going to get the rest of them done soon. And every single one of our IT projects are executing with Agile, including our application maintenance. That is kind of our business as usual stuff, keep the lights on, that kind of thing. So most of our teams are using Scrum, but the thing that I think I'm most proud of is that one of our teams, our enterprise bus team, so part of our new architecture that we have this bus that connects all the systems together. And they said, you know what, we've tried Scrum, we did it for a while. We don't really think it's working for us. We want to try Kanban. We think that's a better model for us. And I said, great, that's the most self-organized thing that anybody has done here. And so they're doing that now, and it's working quite well for them, actually. Their leader, Kevin, is here. And so that's one of the things I'm most proud of about the transformation is that team had the courage to say, look, we know you told us to do it this way, but it's not working. We want to do something different. And they took the initiative to do it on their own. To me, that's the most Agile that it could have been. Our Agile Express team continues to drive improvement. One of the things that is very interesting, so at the end of last year, I went to our leadership and I said, okay, here's what I want to do with Agile in 2016. I said, I want to get our stakeholders more involved and more educated about Scrum. I want to continue to train our internal staff to get better at Agile practices, maybe learn some more Agile development techniques, get better automation, that kind of thing. I said, and then I would like to convert our current teams that are component-based teams. So one team is focused on just the billing engine. One team is focused just on our bus. One team is focused just on a quoting tool. I would like to take those and I would like to convert them into feature-based teams so that any team could build any part or any requirement from the business. And that's a really huge organizational shift. It sounds quite simple, but it's actually really very, very different than how most companies operate. And I presented this to our vice president of IT in her meeting with her direct. And for 20 minutes, they all sat there and discussed the pros and cons. They said, well, okay, if we do that, we're going to have to change how we measure people against their goals. We're going to have to change how this department is structured. We're going to have to cross-train people. And in the end, they said, yeah, that's the right thing to do. We want to do that. And they said, oh, we're going to have to slow down a little bit. And we said, yeah, we're going to have to slow down. And we said, okay. So now my team is going to come up with a plan for how we're going to do that. Because there's a lot involved there, right? There's stuff, there's training, there's all kinds of things. So, but I'm very excited that we've had such good buy-in from our management. And I think it's because they've seen the teams working and the Agile process working for us to deliver these pieces. And we are still not perfect, but we're a lot better than we used to be. We still have a long way to go. That's okay. All right, so retrospective. I'll probably spend the most time here. These are our lessons learned, and I think it's probably what you guys are most interested So first of all, Agile doesn't happen overnight. I really feel like our transformation did begin back in 2011. We had to lay the groundwork done, and it was a very slow moving train. And now it's finally started to pick up momentum and gain speed. So that is definitely not overnight. Change takes a long time, especially when you're dealing with people's careers and their income and their livelihood, and they're slow to change. So be patient. That's my second thing in my retrospective, is that patience is a virtue because change does take long. I have had to learn to be patient. I always thought of myself as patient, but I think I was not as patient as I thought I was. I think I'm a lot better now. Silence as a Scrum Master is a little bit. So I have been in the role of a Scrum Master, and I'm sure, because Jay has mentioned it, you probably noticed, I like to talk. And what I found was that we'd be doing a retrospective or whatever with the team. And I'd say, so what do you guys think about X? And there'd be nothing. And so then I'd start talking and I'd say, well, do you think that? Do you think that? But I didn't give them enough time. And I don't remember who said it to me, but someone said, you gotta be quiet. You can't talk. You're talking too quickly. And I said, all right, that's interesting. So I decided that I would ask my question and then count to 20 in my head. And 20 is a really long time. But it sometimes took till 16 or 17 before someone said something. But they always did. And I was surprised, and sometimes it'd be the most quiet people on the team. So you have to give them the time to kind of, I don't know, work up their courage or something to self-organize. Because I know they have it in them to do it, but they're just not used to it. So you've got to give them that opportunity. What's my next one here? Okay, self-organization. It sounds simple, but it's not. It's really easy to say, hey, you guys, figure it out. You know how to do the work. Figure it out. Well, it's easy to say that. It's a very different thing to get people to do it. I spent a lot of time Googling and asking other Scrum professionals and things like that about how do you get a team self-organized, which sounds almost counterintuitive, right? Almost an oxymoron. I'm going to get you to self-organize. So the best thing I came up with is that for a team to really self-organize, they have to trust each other. And they have to know each other really well. So I started doing all of these team building activities with my team because I didn't know what else to do. And I had a lot of challenges because, as I mentioned, my team is not 100% co-located. Some of them are actually consultants in from our vendor for our billing engine. Some of them are here on the East Coast. Some of them are so they're all over the place. It's not ideal, but it's what we've got. And so I had to find team building activities that could be done over the phone or on a video conference. You'd be surprised how few team building activities fit into that category. All of them are like, get together and build something out of marshmallows and spaghetti, or, you know. You can't do that on the phone. So my favorite one I found, and I don't know if it's my favorite because it went so well or went so poorly, but I asked everybody to bring a coin to our next meeting. And so some people said, oh, what she's trying to like trick us, it's like about requirements, or like they didn't know what was up, but they knew something was up. So somebody brought a step token, somebody did something like that. So really I just wanted them to coin have a year on it. And the idea was that you tell something that happened in your life based on a year of the coin. So in the end, everybody came up with a year. But the funniest part of the conversation was that there was such a wide age range of people in my team that some people had coins that were from before they were born. That made the rest of us feel a little old. And then the older people said, well, I was around for all your coins, but back in BC 19, So actually it was a really fun activity, and it just got the team talking about things that had happened, and they were laughing because, the young ones. Anyway, so it turned out to be a good thing. So I'm always on the lookout for team building that can be done not in person. So if you have any, I'd love to hear them. So yeah, and I think it's interesting. That team has been operating together since, I think, April, and we just did our sprint planning today for our next sprint that started today. And for the first time, I felt like that team took ownership of that sprint planning meeting without me or the product owner pushing them into doing what needs to be done in sprint planning. That's a really long time. That's where the patience is. But I finally feel like that team has gelled, and it's really self-work. And I think it's just little incremental changes all along the way that help do that. So one other thing I did in our daily scrums, they would all give their update, and then they'd turn back to me to call on the next person. And I finally said, I'm not picking the next person. When you go, you pick the next person. And I think that little subtle change made a big difference in how they thought of the team. Because they kept looking to me as a scrum master to tell them what to do. And I didn't want to tell them what to do. I wanted to be a service leader. And so I wanted them to decide what to do. So it's very subtle, almost psychology that you have to get into when you're dealing with that kind of thing. Okay, so keep hammering away at silos. We still have, and I don't know if we'll always have this, but we still have a lot of people who think of themselves, well, I'm a tester, or I'm an analyst, or I'm a developer. And that cross-functional activity is not happening yet. Now, I am hopeful that with this new direction from our management, that we'll be able to start giving people the room to try something new that might not be their primary skill set and help them gain secondary and tertiary skills. But we still have a lot of silos. The very first sprint planning we did, my QA people said, okay, so the team will pick all the stories, right, and we'll put the tasks in, and then the next day, the QA team, we're going to meet, and we'll come up with what our tasks are. And I said, really? They said, yeah. I said, do you want to let the rest of the team off the hook for quality? And they said, well, no, but we don't know what we have to do until we hear what they're going to do. And they said, you got to decide with them. If you go off by yourself, they're not going to think about quality, and you want them to, right? They said, yeah, okay. So it was very interesting. They still had that mindset. Like they said, well, no, we're participating in sprint planning. And I said, no, you're not. You're observing sprint planning. So it's very interesting. I find myself, I think my team members think I'm arguing with them, but I'm really just challenging their assumptions. They said, one of the teams, our application maintenance team said to me, they had their first sprint at the beginning of the year. And they did it for 2 weeks. And at the end of the 2 weeks, they said, okay, this is all right. We don't really like it, though. And we want to have a 3-sprint cycle. And the first sprint, we're going to work on the requirements. And the second sprint, we're going to build it. And then the third sprint, we're going to do UAT. Guys, that is waterfall in Agile clothing. And they said, no, we're still doing sprints. I said, no. So in the end, we came to a sort of compromise. And I overheard one of them say, well, we fixed it, but Beth is mad about it. She's angry about it. They said, guys, I'm not here to tell you what to do. You don't need my permission. I'm only here to challenge your assumptions about what is the right or wrong thing. And that's hard for me too, right? Look, who doesn't like to tell people what to do and be listened to? But for me to step back and say, are you sure that that's really what you want to do? And are you doing it for the reasons you think you are, or are you doing it because that's what you're used to and it's what's comfortable? So I just want to challenge them and make them feel a little uncomfortable. That's how change happens. Okay, so hammer away at this. Start where you stand. Some improvement is better than none. a lot of times when you go to a Scrum class or a talk or whatever, they'll say, well, if you're not doing Scrum 100%, then it's Scrum class or Scrum fall or, it's not real Scrum. I don't agree with that. I actually think that whatever you do, you're doing Scrum. You just have more room for improvement than somebody else might. And that is okay. We're always going to have room for improvement. And just because we're starting it somewhere down here doesn't mean we're not doing Scrum. So I think it's important to remember that it's okay that you don't do everything right the first time. You're not going to do everything right the first time. Or the second or the third, that's right. In fact, I think that's my, one of my other points up here. The first few sprints are going to be hard. So every new team that starts, I say to them, guys, the first couple of sprints, they're going to be hard. They're going to suck. You might not like it, but you're going to get better at it. And that's what's important. Okay, so reality is rarely ideal. So this is kind of what we've been talking about all along here. Reality, you have to deal with your management who doesn't understand what you want to do. You have to deal with your stakeholders who are trying to interfere. You have to deal with all the other things that are keeping you from being in a perfect world. None of us lives in a perfect world. If we did, I think we'd be a lot happier. So ideal is nice for textbooks. It's not nice for reality. So you have to deal with what you have. It goes along with start where you stand. You can do what you can do. You start where you are, and then you get better. And then the last one I have here is that you should be like minded and try it. Because if it doesn't work, you don't have to keep it. To me, that is the beauty of Scrum. You try it for a couple of weeks for a sprint. If it doesn't work, throw it out the window. You'll know at the end of the 2 weeks. Or maybe you try it for another sprint. So be like minded, try it. You just might like it. So.
But that gets back to your point about failure earlier.
Yes.
Because one of the advantages of any Agile method evolved to be better is that you can fail faster and in smaller increments, which means you do less damage.
Yes.
So the idea is to reframe failure as a learning opportunity.
Absolutely.
And that helps deal with the overall effort and get away from, because the overall challenge that you're facing is that systems govern behavior.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
And you have to change the system.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's tough.
Yep. And I say to my teams all the time, I would much rather know after 2 weeks that I was failing than after 6 months. Because it's much easier to course correct after 2 weeks than after 6 months. And you're absolutely right, the system does govern things. So if we make the system easy to change and we build in those times to actually inspect and adapt and implement the change, that is the key, by the way. I think a lot of times people say, oh, we did a retrospective, we talked about all the things we didn't like, and nobody makes a plan to actually fix any of those things.
Did you talk about the stuff you did like too?
Oh yes, we do. We talk about the stuff we did like. So one of the things I ask my teams to do is that at the end of each retrospective, after they've gone through what they liked, what they didn't like, what they could improve upon, is to pick 2 or 3 things to focus on in the next sprint for improving. We don't, I don't think we're mature enough yet in our process to include those as part of our backlog, so I have them do it as part of the retrospective. And then, as the Scrum Master, on each Monday at the Scrum call, this is what they wanted. We review what those focus items are, so they keep in people's minds about what we're going to work on improving. And it's remarkable to me how much it's helped. And sometimes it's a little thing like we're going to remember to update our time remaining in Jira banner, so our burn down is accurate. Sometimes it's something as simple as that, and sometimes it's a huge thing like we got to get better at narrowing our stories. So it's very interesting, and I think it's important that they pick what those things are. I sometimes offer suggestions based on what I've observed, but I think it's really important for the team to own the choices about how they're going to. And then I think also, keying off what you said, David, it's interesting that I tell them also that it is okay to fail as long as you learn something from it. It is not okay to fail and then just keep doing it. And again, we are IT people. I don't think any of us like to fail, and I don't think many of us are used to failing. Computers are logical, systems are logical things that work in the way that you tell them to. And so when we try something and it doesn't work out, that doesn't feel so good. But if you learn something from it, then that makes it valuable. So I try to emphasize that to them. I think that's all I really have to tell you guys, but I'm happy to take questions.
So you mentioned the impetus for this was what was happening quickly and disparate across whatever. And you mentioned, the point you mentioned about management was you sold it on this quick. But what was the thing you mentioned for this solution was offered and for how aligned the vision versus the local CIO?
So the easy answer to that question is no. And Sungard is an interesting place. Because we're a technology company, we have a lot of, we're a company full of technologists. So we have a CIO. Well, we used to have a CIO. Now we have a pair of vice presidents. We have a CTO. We have operations teams that also are building software and building technology solutions for our customers. There is a lot, and we have a software division that one of our products that we sell is a piece of software that helps people do disaster planning. So we have a lot of CIOs or people in a role that a traditional CIO might do. My focus right now has been simply on our internal IT. And so the vice president that I report up through owns all of that except for infrastructure and desktop. So our network and our, like the employee laptops and software and things like that, that's not under her purview, but everything else, all of the systems that the company does business on, it's all of that. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
The path that you're following, by the way, are you familiar at all with any of John Cotter's work?
A little bit.
Change specifically? Do I really need this? Do I need this?
Fine, I'll use it. The question was whether or not you're familiar with John Cotter's work, specifically dealing with leading change, because the stuff that you stumbled into are close to, and you got a couple more things to add, the 8 steps that he talks about to deal with organizational change.
Okay.
Building a vision, developing a guiding coalition, developing plans, getting people involved, getting buy-in, do something, and do it in a way that's structured to allow the improvement initiative to continue and maintain itself and build its own momentum. And you're doing a lot of that stuff. Taking a look at his book might help you, how do I put this, shorten some of the learning curve and capitalize on some of the stuff that you've already done.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. I have been looking for those kinds of resources. So thank you, John Cotter.
K-O-T-T-E-R.
I will look it up.
Your distributed scrum teams, I have a question about how you run daily stand-ups. Are they by conference call?
Yes, so we use WebEx and conference call, and I have recently started asking people to turn their video on, because I think it makes a big difference to see people than to just talk to them. They become more human.
For the members of the teams who are in a locality, are they allowed to work from home and call into the stand-up, or do you co-locate them?
So, in general, we co-locate where we can, and we do really have pockets, right? We have a few people in Montana who are together. We have a few people here in our office in Wayne who are together. So we do co-locate where we can. Obviously, people do occasionally work from home, but in general, yes, we ask them to co-locate where they can.
Thank you.
What are some of the biggest drawbacks you saw on the component-based team and that led you to move towards a feature-based?
I think we could talk for a long time about that. So in my opinion, and I'm by no means an expert here, but my opinion about the drawbacks of the component-based teams, and this is how I told it to our manager. I said, let's say we have a backlog, right? It's prioritized items 1 through 50. And this is not my idea, by the way. This is straight out of large-scale scrum. Let's say we have a backlog, 50 items, they're prioritized. And we have component team A and component team B and component team C. And component team A can work on items 1, 2, and 3. And component team B can work on items 4, 5, and 6. But the first item that component team C can work on is until item 6. What are we going to do? Are we going to pull 50 up? It's less important. It doesn't add as much value. Or are we going to let them sit idle? And neither of those options is a good one. So that, I think, to me, really clarifies why it's important that your teams be more cross-functional and any team be able to take any item. But then you know that you are always delivering the most important things in the right order.
Any insights or lessons learned about estimating?
Estimating. Okay, so yes, the first time we did planning poker, so we used a 2-week sprint. I probably mentioned that a couple times. So we've been using a 2-week sprint for quite a while. A month was too long, a week is too short. 2 weeks seemed to work out. And I made the mistake of saying to the team, let's just say that 13 points is about the length of the sprint. I said, but I don't want you to relate that to time or hour estimate. I want it's still a relative estimate, but I made the mistake of making that connection. And so, forever, they take 13 story points as the 2-week sprint in that. But then, is it one person working for the 2-week sprint? Is it the whole team working for there were big arguments. So I decided we needed to get away from that. So I went on Google. I have strong Google review by it. I said, what are some other ways that we could do estimating? And I read an article, and I wish I could remember the name of the guy who wrote it. But I read an article that talked about instead of doing planning poker, take all your stories and arrange them in size from smallest to largest without assigning points, and then go back and say, okay, if this one is 1 point, is the next one double or the same? Okay, the next one, is it double or the same? And so I did that a couple of times with the team, and that seemed to get them away from that concept of absolute estimate and back to the idea of a relative estimate. And so now we use the doubling scale with planning poker. And that seems to work a lot better because they have a good volume of stories from the past to compare it. But it is really difficult at first, and sometimes you just have to set an arbitrary value and kind of see how it goes.
That method is called affinity estimating.
Affinity estimating, yes, thank you. Yes.
I heard you mention Jira as a tool, and that's what we use. Just from some of the research I've done, it doesn't seem to be one of the better tools, but did you do any research before you chose that, or did you already have it? How did you, I guess I'm asking about any tools that you know about.
Yeah, so we used Jira because it's what we already had, and it had an Agile or Scrum module that I actually think is, for our purposes anyway, been pretty decent. My biggest challenge has been trying to convince everybody to use it out of the box and not customize it too much, which you can do. Jira is obviously very flexible and lets you, do whatever you want. But my goal is to try and simplify, and using it out of the box. So yeah, we did not really explore too many other tools. I will tell you that at a corporate level, we're looking at new PPM tools. And one of the requirements we have that has to do with how it handles Agile projects and reporting, none of them are doing it. And I think there's a difference between Agile portfolio management and that program management and the day-to-day management of a Scrum. I think Jira is pretty good at the day-to-day. We are now actually looking at Jira Portfolio, which is a plugin, and it seems to be meeting some of our needs. We don't know yet if it's going to be all of them.
Yeah, real quick on that.
Yeah.
This is not something that necessarily would easily apply to you because you don't have co-located teams, but with new teams, anytime they start talking tech, I introduce sticky notes and Sharpies, and that's the tech until they get it.
Yes, absolutely. I agree 100%. If you're co-located, use the sticky notes. It's the easiest way to understand the things moving. One of the things I like about Jira is that it does have a Scrum board that sort of emulates that. You can, of course, over-engineer it, but yeah.
Kind of going off the estimation part, like lessons learned, what about the terrible word carryover? Do you have anything, lessons learned on that, with what your team did?
I'm sorry, can you repeat it?
Carryover?
Like terrible stories that don't get finished?
Yeah.
Technical debt.
Well, technical debt or stories that don't get finished? Okay, so I'm not sure that my team has ever completed all the stories they committed to. Yes. In fact, I was excited last night when we did our sprint review because we had completed 220 of the 500 that they committed to. I know that sounds like ridiculous numbers. Their estimates are probably high, but it's all relative. So, yeah. So 220 was really good, but they committed to twice that. And I think it comes from that mindset of wanting to do everything at once. And even though they're working on them in the priority order, they're putting too many of them into the sprint. So we've been working quite a lot in the last, 4, 5, 6 sprints on improving that, and they've gotten better. We still have a ways to go.
What have you been doing? That's kind of
what have we been doing? So I talk about it a lot. I think they're probably tired of me talking about it. The other thing is that I keep saying to them, I want them to explain to me why we weren't able to finish the story in the sprint. And so sometimes they'll say, well, we were waiting for this, or we were waiting for that, or the other thing. So what we did just this last sprint actually is we discovered a new feature in Jira called flagging. I don't know how we didn't know about it. And so you can actually flag something if it's blocked. And that is a great visual for people to go, oh, this is held up. Let me focus on that. And I think that helps us a lot. Again, a lot of our challenges are because we're not co-located, so we have to come up with good ways to work together. Another thing that I implemented not so long ago, not me personally, but the team, we decided that after our 15-minute stand-up, we were going to leave the bridge of the WebEx open to have that sort of team-together time where people could talk and then get things done. And all of a sudden, things started getting finished more quickly. If the team is co-located and they're working on something and they're stuck, somebody's going to be sitting at the desk and go, oh man, this is really bothering me. And the person next to them is going to go, oh, hey, let me help. When they're not all sitting together, they can't do that. So just having that extra 45 minutes where they were doing that triggered them to do more of it. So I think that really helped too.
People tend to accuse me of being a maverick, but the way I look at it is I do have more stories in the sprint than you're going to have done because sometimes you need part of it. You don't want to run out of stories. Also, the other thing is I think it's very bad and inefficient to look at it and say, I have 3 days left in my sprint. This story is probably going to take me 5 days. I'm not going to start it. And it's stupid. You want to be predictable. You want to have a constant pace. If a story spills over into the next sprint because it's halfway done, if you're looking at that, your total velocity at that point then is 35, 30, 40. Well, guess what? You have over the time, you're putting to bed 35 story points per sprint. There's nothing wrong with that. Why people have this thing about, oh my God, the story's escaping the sprint and spilling over to the next sprint. There's nothing wrong with that. It's more wrong to sit around and twiddle your thumbs because I'm not going to get the story done.
Yeah, no. And I'm sorry if it came across like I was trying to say that
But
they
people
shouldn't.
think that a lot.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And that's true. You don't want to not start something because it's not going to be done in the sprint. But part of my team's problem anyway is that they were making these stories really big. They should have maybe sliced them down a little more. Our velocity looks something like this. We do 40 points, then we do 40, then we do 25, and then the next sprint we do 200. And that's because they were doing little bits of each one throughout the 4 sprints. And then on the last sprint, they switched them. So that was not really providing us very good consistency.
This is one thing I can share at my team. When we first got started, there was this psychological dynamic going on that was driven by the president of if they weren't taking on up to their neck an amount of workload, somehow they were perceived as not being ambitious, not working hard, and so forth. So we got to the first sprint cycle or two, and we got to the retrospective, and I said, well, we didn't complete it. Why do you think? And then just by shining the light of awareness on, not making anybody right or wrong about it, I said, well, we took on too much, great. But it took a couple of cycles for people to be okay, and I think it's important as a Scrum Master to make it okay and make it a safe environment for people to take a sane amount of work within the sprint, because especially with technology, it's not like we're building a bridge. We know we're going to start here and end there. It's not going to change. We know that halfway along the way we're going to learn things. Not only the things we don't know, but we enter the realm of what we don't know that we don't know. And by confronting it and being realistic about it, we get to the point of having a sense of completion, which gives everyone on the team a sense of satisfaction and productivity and accomplishment. And there's nothing wrong with going back to the backlog and saying, hey, we have extra time. Let's see what else we can get done, or at least start. Just even though you've done the same thing technically, it's a different feeling about it. At the end of the day, we're human beings, we're human machines, and how we approach the work really drives the productivity of it.
Yeah, the other thing that I've done with more than one team, have them use story points when they're dealing with grooming and estimate complexity. But when they get into team planning, I suggest that they do it in hours, figuring 75% availability. The reason for that is, whether you're talking about 40 hours, 80 hours, pick your number. Nobody's 100% available.
Oh yeah, no, of course not.
And there's always a fire someplace else, or personal, or something. So dealing with estimating in hours for the team sprint planning, based upon 75% availability, and then covering that in the retrospective and looking at how the story complexity, the definition of done, the acceptance criteria, all contributed to either good, weak, or poor hours estimates. And the other thing that we've done sometimes to get people started is deal with a 1-week sprint. Not because we're going to stay there, but because the longer the event horizon, the harder the estimation with any precision becomes. It's like doing, accuracy versus precision.
Yeah.
All right? If you say that pi is 2.71828182884, it sounds extraordinarily accurate, but because it's precise. But in point of fact, you're more accurate to say pi is about 3.
Yes, right, absolutely.
Two simple questions. How big are your Scrum teams? And then, you're really saying 500 points or 500 scores?
Points, 500 points. And our team has, so my billing engine team has 10 to 12 depending on the sprint, which I know, again, is not quite ideal. But sometimes we add additional testing people when, because you fall behind in that area the most. Again, I know, not ideal, but my core team is 10, which is pretty large. Working? Yeah. Yeah. Well, start with things.
In a seminar, and we thought Mr. Conlon was talking about setting limits, where you would say, okay, so you've got, let me say, 5 QA, and then X, and so forth.
Have you applied an approach like that to maybe try to help get more realistic goal setting?
Yeah, so we haven't tried combining Scrum and Kanban in one team, but our Enterprise Service Bus team is using Kanban exclusively, and they are putting those limits in place where only so many stories can be in design or in testing or whatever at any one time. I think it's working quite well for them. Yeah, but we haven't tried combining it. That's an interesting idea, but it might not be a bad idea.
One other quick question. You mentioned that you had a command and control problem in the organization. How have you addressed that?
Largely by working with our leadership to help them understand that so the problem was, I maybe phrased that poorly. It was less that our management insisted on being in charge, it's that our employees, people doing the work, were used to being told what to do, and so they weren't taking the initiative. So encouraging...
because managers were used to telling them what to do, and that gets back to the command and control issue that you raised.
Yeah. And, you know, definitely methodologies like Scrum, like LESS, like Kanban, they threaten middle management. They do. Because they feel like they're not important anymore. And I think it's just their role changes. So we've been trying to work with them, turning them into more of a coaching role than a directive role. And so that's, I think, part of it. I think we have a lot of work to do in that area. That's something we're going to focus on.
Some consideration. You have a core team, and over time, people come and go. And some of the factors that go into bringing someone else in, whether it's behavioral or it's in addition to technical skill or a combination of you consider who they're replacing or the dynamics of people that are there. Some of those intangible factors that people come in that need to expand their factors.
So we haven't had too much team change. We have mostly added people and not lost people. So adding someone, I think, is a little easier than replacing someone because they kind of have the peer pressure of the rest of the team to get them in line, so to speak. But I think a lot of times, especially once your teams really do get more self-organized, there is some peer pressure involved, right, to get them in, to get that new person in line. Our CTO has talked a lot about, we report up to our CTO, and he has talked a lot about the company is changing, and you can get on the bus, or if you're not interested in the direction we're going, you can leave, and both of those are fine options. So he's been very frank with people about that. And I think that some people have left because of the changes that we've been making. And not, you know, Agile is not for everybody. Not everybody likes that kind of change. Not everybody can deal with that kind of different structure.
Why do you think that is?
Why does it have 31 flavors of ice cream? I don't know. I think people are different.
But that's actually a very good answer.
Yeah.
Because some people are comfortable where in an environment where they have limited responsibility for outcomes explicitly. And Agile teams, it's not the individual that has the responsibility for the outcome. It's the team that collectively or has the, which, by the way, gets back to your question about evaluations. If you haven't looked at them yet, consider 360 reviews.
Yes.
So, just considering the time, we have time for 2 more questions.
Kiran, if I can go.
And then we're going to close. 1 and 1.
Okay, then I'll ask the more important question. Prioritize my question. Actually, there are 2 questions probably tied into that. So how do you deal with, and I want to get more thoughts if possible, how do you deal with a constantly changing team? And I'll give you the example that, you know, during the discovery sessions when you're really designing the detailed solution, you realize that instead of option A, you want to go to option B. But what it means in this organization that if you want to go to option A, you want this resource who is outsourced from this company. But if you want to go to option B, you want this resource who will be outsourced and onboarded from another company. So you're literally realizing on the day of the sprint planning that you want this resource versus that, but the onboarding process and that is really not supporting. So what are some of the ideas to address that?
So I think that's one of the reasons why I developed my little 2-hour Scrum 101 class. Whatever, I have a deck that I put together, and I have reused it. I can't tell you how many times I've used it in the last year. I recorded it, but nobody wants to watch the recording. So I go through that deck. I explain the fundamentals of Scrum, and I talk about the environment at Sungard and how we're using Scrum because nobody's doing it perfectly, obviously. And then again, I rely a lot on their new team to help get them onboarded because one person can't do it all. Everything's a team effort. So I've tried to just make sure everybody gets that same consistent introduction and let it kind of go organically from there. I know that's not a very...
No, it helps, but my question is more around it. How do you even address the overall planning and the commitment of the work towards the sprint when you don't know you will need resource A versus resource B, and your scoping and estimates are changing really on that day? I mean, how much, because when we say you cannot really detail, design, or plan it out, how do you
I think if you're at the point where you don't know, if there's that much you don't know, you need to have, some people will call it a sprint zero, or you need to do more planning. It's really difficult to have a team go in and commit to work if they don't know what the work is, or they just learned what it is.
And I'd say some of that is product owner too.
I'm sorry?
Some of that is product owner responsibility.
Yes.
Because if the teams are dealing with that level of ambiguity, they really can't get the work done.
Right, exactly. So you may have to say, okay, you know what, this sprint, we're going to figure that stuff out. And if that means we're 2 weeks or a week or 2 weeks behind where we thought we were starting, that's okay. We can only start with what we know, and we don't know enough yet.
Would that be that the design program?
Kieran has the last question up there.
I just have a question. I've been in a transformation situation. How do you keep the confidence level of senior executives, even though they sign up from the beginning, but they're hearing it from the peanut gallery that, the rumbles of the people that are against it? And then to follow up kind of with that question is, how do you measure yourself, not really yourself, but how do you measure this program every year in front of senior management to say, we're succeeding? I know you can look at individual sprints and see, like, we're catching things earlier, we're delivering quicker, and things like that, but that doesn't happen for at least a few months if you're just starting out doing Agile. Like, if a senior manager says, I want to hear what you're doing in 6 months, and if we don't see any lift and everyone hates it, we're just going to go back to the way we did it.
So, okay, you had a couple questions. So the first one was, how do I keep senior management on board? My funny answer is that I'm a really good cheerleader. I think you have to continually communicate with them. As a project manager, program manager, I like to say that 80% of my job is communication. I don't think that changes. I think it's still 80%, maybe more communication. So you have to make sure that they're hearing the message that you need them to hear. And you also have to, a lot of what I do is going around and talking to the employees. And if they have concerns, I want to try and address them before it gets to that level. So trying to nip it in the bud is definitely important. Now, there are always people who are going to complain and go, but you need to make sure they're hearing the good side of the issue. The second part of the question was, how do I measure success? Yes, okay. All right, so the very first release that we had to do of our early engine, we started doing sprints in April, and we were supposed to deliver something on June 30th. And the scope of what we were supposed to deliver was Tuesday. And we were getting close to June 30th, and we weren't going to make it. We were not going to make everything that we had said. But we had done things in the most priority order, and we had potentially shippable stuff, sort of, at the end of every sprint. And so by the time June 30th came around, they said, look, we are ready to release something, but it's not the full scope of what we wanted. But here's everything that we are delivering. Here's all the value. And they went, it's only been 9 weeks. That's pretty good. Okay. And they saw that, and they understood, I mean, look, senior management might not want to admit that they understand the iron triangle, but they do. They know that you can't hold scope and time and money constant and quality and expect nothing to break, right? Something has to shift. So they get that. So if you're honest with them and open, transparency is one of the values of Scrum. You have to maintain that transparency and openness with them. That will, I think, help them buy in. So I just didn't really answer your question about measuring success. I measured success that we delivered something when we said we would, even though it wasn't the full scope of what we said we were going to deliver. We still delivered something that added value to the business and let us keep going and build more.
With that, I'd like to thank Beth for joining us. People say, don't look behind that curtain like in the Wizard of Oz. But it takes a certain person who is sincere in what they're doing to be able to come up here and tell you about some of the challenges and some of the successes and how they've gotten there and share that with a room full of people that we haven't met an hour ago. So again,
but Jay, that's the essence. Jay, that's the essence of transparency.
Yes, but not everybody can do that.
That's true.
Not everyone has the ability to stand up and do that. So thank you very much, Beth.
My email's up there. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to send me a note if you have questions. I'll try and answer them. Again, this is just my experience, but I hope that you guys have learned something from it tonight.